Hello there, and welcome to Pfeiffer Library's ProQuest tutorial. Today we're going to talk about how to use the ProQuest database to find up-to-date scholarly sources to augment your research. There's a lot to cover today, so let's dive right in. Hello everyone. Today we're going to be talking about one of the resources that doesn't automatically show up in your Dragon Quest search results, not as well as we would like at least. A resource called ProQuest. So to find ProQuest, we're going to start at the library's homepage, and then we're going to go over here to Databases. And we're going to look under the letter D for dissertations. And we'll scroll down here to Dissertations and Theses Global. ProQuest is a database that incorporates quite a few resources, but one of the main resources that it has is those master's theses and doctoral dissertations. Both of those are the product of graduate students, master's students for the theses, and a PhD student creates a dissertation. Both types of resources, I like to describe them as journal articles on steroids, right? Because they're up-to-date research that have been done by scholars in training, master's students and PhD students, who are going on to eventually become scholars in the broader world. And the research that goes into a master's thesis or a dissertation produces a piece of writing that you'll see as we look through these. Master's thesis is maybe 50 to 100 pages. A dissertation is much longer than that. It's maybe 200 pages, 300 pages. It's the length of a book. All of that has the most up-to-date research that those students could find. They're doing research projects just like you, but on a much bigger scale. So these become really useful resources that we want to delve into, and that's why I'm going to show you this database today. The other thing that I want to point out while we're here and we're looking at databases is that anything that lists EBSCO as an alternate name, things like Dragon Quest, those naturally are incorporated in a Dragon Quest search, so you don't have to do anything extra to access those databases. Databases like the Dissertations and Theses Global database that we're about to look at that have alternate names that don't include EBSCO in that list. We just see the ProQuest Global, ProQuest Dissertations and Theses listed here. That doesn't show up as well in Dragon Quest. Dragon Quest will catch some of it, but not all of it. And we want it all. We want to have the best selection of resources that we possibly can. So if I click on this link here, that's going to take me to the landing page for ProQuest, the Dissertation and Theses database. All right, so now that we're here in the ProQuest database, there are a few things to point out. You have, just like Dragon Quest, we have our basic search, we have our advanced search, we have something called publications instead of journals. This is a way that we can look at specific journals, specific publishers, where we already know where the material is coming from, or when we know that there's a journal that publishes a lot of material that usually works for our research, and we're just kind of poking around to see what's out there. It's a good place to start once you're pretty deep in a field and you have a pretty good idea of the types of resources that you're looking for. In the center here, we have our basic search, and that's usually where we're going to start. We can add a lot of things later on. We can also add a lot of things up front. If we come here to the advanced search, it looks a lot like the Dragon Quest advanced search, right? We're able to choose individual keywords, and then we've got our Boolean operators, our familiar Boolean operators, to decide whether we're connecting these with an or, a not, whether we want to find both keywords or whether we want to find just one and not the other, that sort of thing. Okay. So to get us started, what I'd like to do here is do a very basic search. We're just going to look for global warming and nothing else. I want to see what's in this database on that topic. And this is what we find. So just like Dragon Quest, we're going to have our search terms at the top to remind us kind of where we started, what we were originally looking for. We're going to see in blue underlined text the links to the individual results that ProQuest has found in its search for us. We're also going to get a little bit of detail about what type of things these are. So we have scholarly journals as pretty much all of our search results. If I scroll down a little bit, I might eventually find something else, but it looks like I'd have to go to another page to do it. We're mostly finding journal articles here, which ProQuest also includes. I pointed out those dissertations and theses as the unique resource that this has a lot of, but ProQuest also has the typical resources that you expect when you do a Dragon Quest search. So your scholarly peer-reviewed journals, your newspaper articles, your magazine articles, all of those type of things. The other little tidbits that are a little unusual that I want to point out here. So you have your full text link, just like you would in Dragon Quest, but beside that, we can click on the abstract and look just at the abstract for this particular resource. Over to the side, we can see how many times this particular resource has been cited by other people. This is really useful when you start working on things like literature reviews and you want to know how impactful something is in its field of research. So this journal article that came up first has been cited 9 times in the last 10 years. I don't know that I would call that particularly influential. We're going to probably see other resources that have been cited more often than that. But this will give me a really good idea of how much authority this particular resource has in its field. You're going to hear a lot more about that type of thing when we talk about the scrap test and evaluating your sources. So file that away for another video. The other thing that I want to point out is that some of these resources, although not all of them, just because of the way they're indexed, are going to show you how many references there are in that particular resource's Works Cited page or references page. This is really useful when you find a resource that's current, so this article from 2023. If this is an article that I can use in my research paper, I also know that there are 103 other articles, other resources that this resource includes in its references. You're going to see that we can delve directly into that list of references and start mining those references to find other sources that we might use in our paper. It's an excellent way to get ahead in your research and to move a little more quickly in your research by narrowing things down. So this is the basic view. What I want to do next is I want to start applying some of the filters that are probably familiar if you've watched the Dragon Quest tutorial videos. The first one that I'm going to apply here is the full text filter. I'm only interested in resources that I can click on and get the whole thing. There are disadvantages to that, but for now, for demonstration purposes, I just want to see things that I can look at in full right away. The other filter I want to apply here is peer-reviewed maybe. Now I need to think about that because applying the peer-reviewed filter is going to lose several resource types for me. Newspapers, those aren't peer-reviewed, those are gone. Magazines, those also aren't peer-reviewed, those are gone. Our scholarly journals are going to stay, but our dissertations and theses, because their review process is slightly different. It's essentially peer-reviewed, but ProQuest doesn't think of it as exactly the same as peer-reviewed. If I add this filter, those are also going to go. So that's a disadvantage to adding these types of filters. Now, when I'm working on a science topic like global warming, I probably want up-to-date current materials. You're going to hear more about that in evaluating resources, the scrap test, thinking about how current something is. And let's narrow this down to just the last year, the last 12 months. Okay. Adding that filter, you'll notice that the number of search results I have started well over 200,000. I'm now down to 11,677 results, but these are all peer-reviewed journal articles, mostly. If there are a couple stragglers in here that missed the filters, but essentially all peer-reviewed journal articles that were published in the last year. This is all current information. Any of these sources would be an excellent resource for the right research paper. All right, so the next thing I want to do is actually look at one of these resources, show you what it looks like when I click on it. So let's start with this first one, Satellite Observed Strong Subtropical Ocean Warming as an Early Signature of Global Warming. Okay, Click on the resource, we can see from the top left here that it is available in full text. That's what we expected. That's what our filters told ProQuest we wanted, so that's good. I'm going to see each of the authors listed here, and if I want to see more of their work, I can click on those authors. If I click on that author, the other thing that I'm going to see right away is where they work and a little bit more about them. This is very important when we start talking about evaluating the credibility of a source. You're going to look into these authors a little bit to get a sense for why you should trust the things that they've produced. Again, that references the scrap test video. If you haven't already watched that, it's an excellent resource in conducting better scholarly research. As we look at the article here in the center, I have the article itself. It's 11 pages. I can see that right away. I've got an abstract right in the center that's going to tell me what this article is about. When I'm doing research, I generally want to read that abstract first to get a sense for whether this will connect with my research. Once I've decided that it's something worthwhile, that I do want to actually pursue this particular angle for my research paper, I can click in the top right and download this entire PDF so I have a full copy that I can refer back to whenever I want. This also allows me to put it into something like Zotero, another excellent video to watch if you haven't already. That'll be linked in the description below. And I can download a PDF from the top right over here as well. I can also copy the web address if I'm just keeping track of where my resources are, but maybe I'm not on my own computer. I'm not able to download that PDF onto the hard drive, so I just want to send myself a link. I have that option as well. I can print it, and if I'm in the library itself, I can print it in black and white for free. So lots of different options for how I can keep this resource. Now, the best part about ProQuest and why it's a pretty good resource when you're doing research, especially in a new field that you're not particularly familiar with. To the right here, I have suggested sources. ProQuest is going to try to link the general subjects of this article that I'm looking at to others that it thinks are similar. Now, it's guessing. It's using context clues. It's using probably AI in the background, so these might not actually be all that relevant. It's a lot like the second or third page of a Google search, right? Things that are probably worthwhile that I might want to dig into are available over here. I can click on any of those and go directly to them. They're hyperlinked and they're in ProQuest. These are other resources that I have access to. If I scroll down, I also see that there are specific terms that are connected to this resource. These are like hashtags on Instagram, right? This is metadata tags that tell us more about the thing. It is a thing that is about climate change, that's about ocean temperature, that's about global warming. I can select as many of these as I want and then do a search for other resources that mention those same keywords, that have those same hashtags. The other thing that I can do is over here on the left, I told you that we could see how many times this particular resource has been cited. So it's been used by 2 other papers and was published in December of 2023. So in 6 months, 2 other peer-reviewed journal articles have already cited this source. And again, once you have a better idea of the peer review process and you know how long that takes, it's more impressive that this has been cited twice in 2 other sources within 6 months than it is that the other article that we talked about on the last slide had been cited 9 times in about 10 years. So this is probably pretty cutting edge. It's research that is engaging with other research that people are currently doing and currently talking about. We can see who else is involved by clicking on the references page here. And I can see that many of these resources I can click on. I can't go directly to the source because it might not exist in ProQuest, but I can click on the Find It option to track it down somewhere else. By default, this is going to be sorted by the most recent material first, although there's a caveat to that as I look through this. It's trying, it really is, but we've got a 2021, we've got a 2008, and then we've got a 2019. So it hasn't done a great job in sorting these resources by how old they actually are. So kind of skim through that and apply your own reasoning and your own logic to get a sense for what's really up to date, what's really current, and which of these other resources you could use in your paper. And that should just about do it for the ProQuest database. You now know how to access ProQuest and to dive deeper into the resources to get a sense for what current materials, what current scholarly materials have been published in your field. You also know how to dive into the references cited by each of those sources and to use ProQuest's built-in features to branch out your research in new directions. If you have any questions about anything that you've seen today or just anything in general, anything research related, feel free to reach out to the library at library@tiffin.edu or directly to me at gilmerjm@tiffin.edu. Thank you for watching and good luck with your research.